Right, so in this video, we're going to be talking about the concept of urban hierarchy, specifically looking at a few ways at looking at the internal structure of urban areas within a country. So first of all, we're going to start with the term urban hierarchy. Essentially, that is hierarchies looking at sort of the way in which something is structured. So you can see in this pyramid, essentially kind of a ranking of large scale kind of conurbations of cities. So what a conurbation is sort of a megalopolis is another term for it. But when you have kind of multiple cities that sort of blend into each other, like the eastern coast of the United States, from Boston down to New York City, down to Philly and Baltimore and Washington, D.C., kind of that forms one large chain of urban areas. And similar things exist in places like Japan, two large cities themselves, and kind of all the way down the ladder of different types of settlements. So what specifically we're going to be looking at is some of the biggest cities within a country and what kind of the distribution and the size of cities within a country tells us about the development of that country. And not surprisingly, as we saw with central place theory, settlements that have larger populations are going to provide more diverse services, kind of the higher up we are on the urban hierarchy. So looking at this within a country, Mexico, we see kind of the differences in the way they classify cities, from Mexico City, which would be kind of in a tier by itself, all the way down where you can see kind of the second tier of cities, Monterrey, Guadalajara, down into the third, the fourth, the fifth, kind of smaller urban areas. So we're going to be looking specifically at kind of a system of this. So there's two ways to kind of quantify this. The first one is primate cities. So the term primate city is specifically when the largest city in a country has more than twice the population of the second largest city. And really, the connotation of primate city is oftentimes they have much, much, much more than the population. So the example of this would be one of the best examples in the world of this is Mexico. Mexico City, in terms of the actual city, has about 9 million people in it. The Mexico City kind of metropolitan area has about 21 to 23 million people in it. And that is far beyond any other city in Mexico. I don't think any other city in Mexico has more than 4 or 5 million. So you see kind of this dynamic of one city within a country sort of being outsized in its importance, in its population. So this can have some benefits. Oftentimes, a city like Mexico City maybe competes on a large, kind of on an international scale, in ways that other cities within the country can't. So Mexico City's done things like host the Olympics and things like that, and has lots of advantages in that regard. But oftentimes, having a primate city within a country is seen as a disadvantage. It's seen as the consolidation of resources in one area of the country. Oftentimes, it's associated with kind of really fast rural to urban migration, which we have seen in many developing countries across the world, and has the general connotation of sort of uneven development, where you have a lack of investment, a lack of resources, and a lack of urbanization throughout the country. So it is generally seen as a negative thing, although there are lots of examples of a country having a primate city and not being less developed or developing. And then there are some examples of developing and less developed countries that actually have a pretty, actually followed the other rule we're going to talk about. So using a diagram, you can see two examples of countries that have a primate city. And Mexico City is kind of one of the classic examples. And many of the problems with the primate city are kind of seen within Mexico. But then you have another example of France, which obviously France is kind of classified as a developed country. And you have Paris sort of far outpacing the other cities within it. So it's kind of funny to think about, we have this, when you think of France, you generally think of Paris, and most of your cultural ideas about France might be about Paris itself. And very rarely do you maybe think about some of the other larger cities within France. All right, so primate cities. Like we said, primate cities have a fairly negative connotation. The term kind of indicates a lack of development or an unevenness that we do see. We kind of evenness that we see in the next concept, which is called Ranksize Rule. So the population, the kind of definition of this is a little bit wonky, but I think it makes sense when you see the kind of illustration. So the nth largest settlement is roughly 1 in population of the largest settlement. So essentially you substitute a number in, and the second largest settlement would be this one here. That's 1/2 the size of the largest settlement. The third largest settlement is 1/3. The fourth largest settlement is 1/4, so on and so forth. And no country follows this perfectly. That's worth saying up front. So if you're looking at, you're looking at countries' population figures for cities, you're not going to see, 8 million and then 4 million and then 2 million and then so you're going to see sort of the I guess it'll be 8 million and 4 million, then I don't know, whatever 1/3 of 8 million is. But no country is going to follow it perfectly. But generally speaking, you do see this more often in more developed countries where you have sort of more even investment throughout the country. So examples of this would be the United States and Germany. You can oftentimes you can graph it, and you can see Ranksize Rule kind of has this linear downward shape where you have this idea of having 1/2 of kind of the 1/2, then 1/3, kind of following that rule. So like I said, generally seen as a positive, indicates even development, countries having multiple competitive cities that compete internationally. So that's Ranksize Rule. And like we said, take it with a grain of salt, like Primate Cities, because it is not a perfect rule. And then there are some countries that don't really follow either. So this is, I couldn't find a map or a chart of India today, but this is India projected to be about 9 years from now. And you can see India really doesn't follow either one. You have it maybe a little bit closer to Ranksize Rule. Definitely not Primate Cities, but really neither, kind of none of the above. So you do see kind of, it's interesting to actually examine the hierarchy itself, the urban hierarchy, because you can see lots of kind of, 3 really, really big cities, but then lots and lots of urban areas throughout the country, but not really following Primate Cities or Ranksize Rule. So that's urban hierarchy. Bye.